They said it couldn't be done. That certain records were sacred, etched in the stone of baseball's past, immune to time, untouched by generations. They were disguised as numbers: 714 home runs, 2,130 consecutive games, 257 hits in a season. And then, someone did it. One by one, those unbreakable records fell not quietly, but spectacularly. Some were shattered by legends, others by villains, a few by players the world didn't see coming. But all of them reminded us that in baseball, history doesn't sit still, it gets challenged, rewritten, and sometimes completely obliterated. This isn't just a story about stats. It's a story about obsession, about endurance, about what it really takes to do the impossible not once, but over a lifetime. And the twist? Some of these records still stand today, not because no one wants to break them, but because the game itself may never allow it again. So what does it mean when the unbreakable gets broken? And what happens when the new records truly can't be touched? Imagine a moment so surreal that even the most seasoned baseball historian has to pause and recheck the stats, because it's not just history repeating itself. It's history redefining itself in a sport rooted in over 150 years of tradition. Certain records were branded as eternal, etched in granite, guarded by legends, and immune to time. Yet here we are. What if I told you that some of those sacred milestones weren't just approached, but shattered, not by ghosts of the past or mythical superhumans, but by real players, real teams, and real chaos, from the silence of a dugout, holding 20 to straight losing series, to the explosion of a 73 home run season in the heart of controversy. This is the story of unbreakable baseball records reborn in fire, glory, and sometimes tragedy. But this isn't just about numbers. It's about what it takes to do the impossible. When Rickey Henderson took off for second, or when Cal Ripken refused to rest, they weren't just chasing stats, they were chasing legacy, chasing time itself. So buckle in, because we're going to explore not only the moments that changed the record books, but the human behind them, the context that made them miraculous, and the modern barriers that may keep these records truly untouchable forever. Let's start with failure. Brutal, historic, unforgettable failure. The 2025 Colorado Rockies didn't just start badly. They started so poorly that even the most pessimistic predictions didn't come close. By the time they were for the 24, they had already become the first team in the modern era to lose at least 24 of their first 28 games, placing them in the same miserable breath as the 2003 Detroit Tigers. By mid-May, the franchise was collapsing in real time. Bud Black, a respected manager, was fired after a 6-33 start. They weren't just losing, they were redefining what losing meant. A projected 27-135 finish would obliterate any prior definition of incompetence. Think about it. The previous worst 50-game start? That was held by the 19-0 for Washington Senators 121 years ago. That's how deep into baseball's fossils you'd have to dig to find someone comparable. And still, the Rockies went lower. But what's even more striking is how little Coors Field, infamous for boosting offense, could save them. A point to the 5-team batting average, an OPS plus of 80, a war in the negatives. These aren't just underwhelming stats, they're funeral bells. Their losing streak in series matchups reached 22 before mercifully ending, cementing their place in the Hall of Shame. But the Rockies' collapse teaches us something vital. In a game obsessed with precision and control, chaos still rules. No front office, algorithm, or stadium elevation could change that. This wasn't just a bad team, it was an unraveling. If the Rockies taught us how low a team can sink, Rickey Henderson taught us how high a single player could soar, literally. Across every base path in the major leagues, it's one thing to be fast, it's another to be a weapon. Rickey wasn't just stealing bases, he was stealing pitchers' souls. And what makes his stolen base record so awe-inspiring isn't just the sheer number. It's how effortlessly, how repeatedly, and how inevitably he did it. In 1982, at just 23 years old, Rickey demolished Lou Brock's supposedly untouchable single-season stolen base record, finishing the season with 130 swipes, for years into his career. He wasn't even close to peaking, and by 1991, he passed Rock again, this time for the career record, landing at 939 and then blasting past it by the end. Henderson had 1,406 career stolen bases. Let that number sink in. No player has come within 500 steals of that total since. In an era obsessed with power hitting and launch angles, Henderson's feat seems almost alien. He averaged 76 stolen bases per season over 13 years. Some teams today don't manage that collectively. His legs were time machines. They turned singles into doubles, doubles into nightmares, and every pitcher into a liability. And sure, people talk about how the game has changed, that we don't steal bases like we used to. But even in the golden age of base stealing, nobody did what Rickey did. He didn't just have green lights, he was the traffic light. And the truth is, it wasn't just speed. It was timing, intelligence, swagger. He watched pitchers like a hawk, noticed the twitch of a glove or a toe, and struck before they even knew he was thinking about it. Today, pitchers throw harder. Catchers are armed with rocket launcher arms. Video analysis breaks down tendencies in real time, but none of it gets us closer to catching Rickey. That's why his records, both single season and career, feel eternal. It's not that players can't try to steal bases. It's that they can't afford to. The risk-reward equation has changed. But what Rickey did wasn't math. It was instinct, art, and guts. In a time before the algorithm could tell you whether to run, Rickey just ran, and by doing so, he created one of the most impossible legacies in baseball, a reminder that the base paths belong to those brave enough to take them. If Rickey Henderson turned speed into legend, then Hank Aaron turned quiet consistency into one of the most powerful stories in sports history. Before Barry Bonds, before the steroid era, and long after Babe Ruth's myth had become scripture, there was Aaron, patient, precise, and devastatingly effective. When he broke Ruth's career home run record on April 8, 1974, it wasn't just a baseball moment, it was a cultural earthquake. But to understand what made it so monumental, you have to understand the climate he did it in. Ruth's record 714 home runs stood for decades. It was worshipped, revered, considered the measuring stick for greatness. Ruth was flamboyant, charismatic, and white. Aaron was quiet, stoic, and black. As he inched closer to 715, the hate mail piled up. Death threats came daily, and yet he kept hitting through the noise, hitting through the weight of expectations, hitting because that's what Hank Aaron always did. His greatness wasn't built on flashy bursts or one insane season, it was built on relentlessness. He hit 30 or more home runs in 15 different seasons. Think about that, 15. Most players are lucky to get one. Aaron's 755 career home runs stood unchallenged for 33 years. And even when Barry Bonds passed him with 762, the shadow of steroids hangs heavily over that crown. Aaron's number still feels cleaner, truer, untainted by controversy. But what makes Aaron's feat so sacred is that it's not just about power, it's about grace. He played 23 seasons and never once hit more than 47 home runs in a year. He didn't need to. He just kept showing up, kept hitting, kept being excellent. And for all the kids who grew up in the South, watching someone who looked like them rewrite history, Aaron wasn't just a slugger. He was a symbol. And that's the real heart of it. These records aren't just numbers. They're human stories, forged in adversity, colored by the era they happened in. Hank Aaron didn't just break a record. He broke a barrier, and that's something no stat sheet will ever fully capture. Where Hank Aaron showed us the long arc of quiet dominance, Barry Bonds brought us the opposite of supernova, a concentrated burst of excellence so absurd, so statistically extreme, that even today it feels almost fictional. The year was 2001, and Barry Bonds wasn't just good, he was rewriting physics. That season, he launched 73 home runs, setting the single-season record that has withstood to decades of chasing, swinging, and ultimately falling short. And it's not just the number, it's how he did it. Bonds wasn't swinging blindly. he was a surgeon at the plate. He had a batting average of .328, an on-base percentage of .515, and a slugging percentage of .863. Yes, you heard that right. His OPS for the season, 1.379. That's not a real number. That's cheat code stuff. He averaged one home run every 6.5 to at-bats. Pitchers stopped giving him anything to hit. He walked 177 times that season, and 35 of those were intentional. He was the most feared man in baseball, and rightfully so. But here's the question that divides fans, even now. Should it count? Bond's name is forever linked to the steroid era, to congressional hearings, to whispers and wink secrets. But even with that cloud, even with the doubts, one truth remains: nobody else hit 73. And here's where it gets tricky. Even if you discount Bonds morally, you can't discount him statistically. The number is real. It's in the record books. And no one, not in the juice ball era, not during the home run boom of the 2010s, not even Judge or Ohtani, has gotten remotely close. That's because 73 isn't just a peak, it's a mountaintop in another dimension. To beat it, someone would have to stay healthy for 160 games, face pitching that's nastier than ever, and still average nearly a home run every other game. It's almost unthinkable. Bond's record may forever carry an asterisk in the minds of many. But its unbreakability doesn't rely on how you feel about it. It relies on what we've seen since. And the answer is simple: nothing. 73 remains untouched. Not because it's protected, but because it's unreachable. But records don't only get shattered at the plate, they also get buried in the dirt, on the mound, by pitchers whose arms become legend. And in that hall of fireballers, one name towers over the rest like a myth made flesh: Nolan Ryan. There has never been another pitcher quite like him, and there never will be. Ryan struck out 5,714 batters in his career. Let that number simmer for a moment. That's almost 1,000 more than the next closest man, Randy Johnson. It's like someone lapping the field twice. But Ryan wasn't just great, he was relentless. He pitched for 27 seasons. He struck out 300 hitters in a season 6 different times. He was 42 years old and still striking out 301 batters in a single year. What he did should not be anatomically possible, and just to cement his missed status, he also threw 7 no-hitters, another record no one is even close to. But what makes Ryan's dominance even more incredible is how raw it was. This wasn't a man sculpted by modern analytics, spin rate data, or pitch clocks. He threw heat, pure, terrifying, untamed heat. His fastball was routinely clocked near or over 100 miles per hour, and this was in the 1970s and 80s, when radar guns weren't juiced and arms were expected to go the distance. And let's be honest, pitchers today don't go the distance. Not like this. They're on pitch counts. 5-inning outings are celebrated. Elbow surgeries are rites of passage. But Ryan, he pitched 27 complete games in a single season. Today, teams might not have 27 total complete games over a decade. So when we say his record is unbreakable, we're not just talking about skill, we're talking about a shift in the philosophy of pitching. In this era of preservation, Nolan Ryan is a fossil and a firestorm. He pitched in for different decades, struck out legends across generations, and he never once looked like he was saving anything for tomorrow, because for Nolan, every pitch was a moment. And if anyone ever dares to chase 5,714 strikeouts, they won't just be chasing numbers, they'll be chasing a ghost wrapped in smoke. If Nolan Ryan's dominance came from raw power, then Cal Ripken Jr.'s greatness came from something quieter, but no less heroic, showing up every single day. Ripken wasn't flashy. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't need to, because his story wasn't written in explosive bursts, it was carved into the calendar. On September 6, 1995, Ripken played in his 2,131st consecutive game, breaking Lou Gehrig's revered Iron Horse streak. The crowd erupted. The game paused. Even the players stood and applauded. But Ripken wasn't done. He kept playing and playing. until he finally chose to stop on his own terms after 2,630 consecutive games. Think about that. Over 16 full seasons. No days off. No rest days. No load management. Through injuries, slumps, doubleheaders, and pressure in today's game, players are held out with minor soreness. Back then, Ripken would show up with a swollen ankle, wrap it, and jog onto the field like it was Sunday church. But don't let the streak fool you into thinking he was just a warm body in a lineup. Ripken won the MVP awards, the Gold Gloves, 8 Silver Sluggers, and racked up over 3,000 hits. He wasn't just there, he was producing constantly. His longevity didn't come at the expense of excellence. It was excellence, and more than any stat, what Ripken gave us was trust. You could count on him. You could build around him. He made greatness a habit, not a headline. In today's era, where schedules are micromanaged and players are meticulously preserved for October, Ripken's streak feels like a relic of another world. It's not just that no one will break it, it's that no one will even try. The incentives are gone. The tolerance for risk is gone. And maybe a bit of that grit is gone too. Ripken's record doesn't just stand because of what it is, it stands because of what the game has become. And in a sport obsessed with analytics, his streak remains one of the last truly human records. Not algorithmic, not strategic. Just one man, every day, saying, put me in. Some records live in highlight reels. Others are buried in box scores, hidden beneath the grind of a long, brutal season. A few are as brutal or as lonely as the record for the most losses. In a single MLB season, for 62 years, the 1962 New York Mets were the face of that futility, finishing with a humiliating 40-120 record. They were an expansion team, yes, but they became synonymous with losing. That was until the 2020 for Chicago White Sox took the field and didn't just match the misery, they surpassed it. On September 27, 2024, the Sox dropped their 121st game of the season, losing 4-1 to the Tigers. They ended 41-121, officially the worst record in modern MLB history. And this wasn't just a case of bad luck, it was a full-blown implosion. They tied an American League record with a 21-game losing streak. 3 separate double-digit losing streaks haunted their season like ghosts. They even lost 14 straight games in which they scored first. That's the kind of stat that makes managers stare blankly at the ceiling. Offensively, atrocious. A league worst pointed to one team batting average, fewer than 1,100 hits. An ops plus of 76, which might as well be a cry for help. There were no silver linings. No plucky rookies breaking out. No miraculous second-half surge. Just pain, followed by more pain, followed by a whisper that the 2025 Rockies might somehow be worse. But here's where the story turns, because even in disaster, there's a lesson. Baseball doesn't let you hide. Over 160 games, it exposes everything. Your scouting, your development, your clubhouse chemistry. A bad stretch in the NFL, that's 2 weeks. In MLB, it's 60 games. And by the time fans even realized the White Sox were historically bad, they were already drowning. In a way, records like this matter more than the glamorous ones. They remind us that greatness has a dark reflection, that behind every 100 win, team is a 100 lost one, and sometimes the worst seasons are remembered not for what they lacked, but for how completely they fell apart. If the 2020 for White Sox showed us the lowest of the lows, then Ichiro Suzuki reminded the world what pure, elegant dominance looked like, one single at a time. While home run records tend to hog the spotlight, the record for most hits in a single season is a masterpiece of discipline, patience, and near mystical consistency. For 84 years, that record belonged to George Sisler, who logged 157 hits in 1920, a record most considered set in stone. But then, in 2004, Ichiro happened. With the focus of a monk and the reflexes of a swordsman, Ichiro stepped up to the plate and made contact his religion. On October 1, 2004, against the Texas Rangers, he tied Sisler's mark. Then, in his very next at-bat, He drove a pitch right back up the middle for his 258th hit. He didn't just break the record, he redefined it. By the end of the season, Ichiro had racked up to 160 hits, finishing with a staggering .37 to batting average. And he didn't do it by muscling balls over fences. He did it with laser-precise grounders, slap singles, and infield hits that defied physics. Pitchers knew what was coming, but it didn't matter. He controlled the bat like a paintbrush, painting line drives to every corner of the field. And here's the part that makes the record feel unbreakable. Ichiro wasn't a one-hit wonder. He logged 10 consecutive 200-hit seasons, the most ever. He was a hitting machine engineered for chaos, and in today's era of uppercuts, launch angles, and swing-for-the-fences mentalities, his style feels almost alien. Baseball today favors violence. At the plate, exit velocity is king, but Ichiro didn't need violence, he needed space. A small window, a misstep by an infielder, and he'd be safe before the ball stopped rolling. And that's why his 260 hits in a season remains one of the most quietly intimidating records in baseball. Not because no one can hit, but because no one can hit like that often, that long. It wasn't just ability, it was obsession. And until someone learns to care about singles the way Ichiro did, his record will stand untouched, like a Zen garden in the middle of a demolition derby. And then there's the kind of record that isn't flashy or glamorous. It doesn't sell jerseys or make highlight reels, but it lives deep in the game's soul. It's the WHIP, walks plus hits per innings pitched, a cold, clean stat that tells you, better than era or strikeouts, how often a pitcher lets someone on. Its efficiency measured in decimal points, and for nearly 90 years, no one did it better than Walter Johnson. In 1913, the big train posted a whip of 0.780, allowing fewer than one base runner per inning over 346 innings of work. That's absurd. That's dominance in an era when gloves looked like leather oven mitts and fields were more dirt than grass. That record stood untouched, whispering through the ages, until the year 2000, the height of the steroid era. Home runs flying out like T-shirts at a minor league giveaway. And right in the middle of it, Pedro Martinez, slim, smiling, electric. That year, Pedro posted a WHIP of 0.737 in the middle of the most juiced era of baseball. He allowed fewer base runners per inning than Walter Johnson did in 1913. That's not just breaking a record, that's lighting the rule book on fire. And Pedro didn't coast there. He earned it with every pitch, every mind game on the mound. Every batter frozen by a changeup that defied gravity in 217 innings. He allowed just 128 hits and 32 walks. And here's the kicker. He struck out 284. It was pitching perfection in the middle of offensive chaos. That season, his ERA was 1.74. The next best ERA in the AL that year, Roger Clemens' 3.70. Pedro's number wasn't just better, it was an entirely different species. But that WHIP, that 0.737, it stands as a monument to what a single pitcher can do when they're not just better than their opponents, but ahead of their time. Since then, only Justin Verlander in 2019 has even approached it in a full season, posting a 0.803. And in today's game where innings are shorter, rotations are tighter, and strike zones dance like Mirage's Pedro's 2000 campaign feels. Unreachable, WHIP isn't the sexiest stat, but it's honest. It tells you, can this man be touched? In 2000, the answer was almost never. Let's shift the focus now from the precision of Pedro to the collective might of an entire team. The 2001 Seattle Mariners, their record, 116 wins in a single regular season, tied for the most in Major League history. But what sets their story apart isn't just the number, it's what it meant. Because unlike the 1906 Cubs, who first hit that 116-win mark almost a century earlier, the Mariners did it in the pressure cooker of the modern era. Bigger stadiums, longer travel, more scrutiny, more parity, and still, they dominated. From April through September, it felt like they couldn't lose. They didn't just win games, they demoralized opponents. They were explosive, surgical, relentless, and what's most incredible, they did it after losing three of their franchise cornerstones, Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr., and Randy Johnson, that would have crippled most organizations. Seattle, they reinvented themselves. They leaned into a new core. Brett Boone had a career year with 37 home runs and 141 RBIs. Edgar Martinez, the model of professionalism, kept delivering. Freddie Garcia and Jamie Moyer anchored a rock-solid rotation. But let's not kid ourselves, this team belonged to Ichiro. The rookie from Japan came in with sky-high expectations and exceeded everyone. He batted .350, stole bases, robbed, hits in right field, and won both Rookie of the Year and MVP. The Mariners finished 116-46, and yet, there's a twist. The story doesn't end in champagne. It ends in silence. In the postseason, the juggernaut fell. They lost the ALCS to the Yankees for 2-1, and just like that, they became the first team in MLB history to win 110 games and not reach the World Series. It was devastating, confounding, proof that baseball, in all its beauty, remains cruel. You can dominate for 160 games and still fall short when it matters most. But does that lessen their record? Not even a little. In fact, it cements it, because 116 wins isn't about a trophy. It's about a season where everything clicked, where teammates became telepathic, where momentum never slowed, where a city believed, and no team, in the 2 decades since, has managed to tie or break it. Not even the 2020 Dodgers with their 111 wins. The 2001 Mariners did something so rare, so volatile, so synchronized it may never happen again. Their failure in October makes the regular season even more mythical, a masterpiece with a tragic final note. From the collective brilliance of a team to the unwavering consistency of one man, no conversation about unbreakable records is complete without the story of Pete Rose and the crown jewel of contact hitting, most career hits. Before Rose, that honor belonged to Ty Cobb, the Georgia Peach, who set the market for 1,191 hits. For over half a century, Cobb's record loomed like a summit no one dared approach. He batted .366 over 24 seasons. He was fast, aggressive, volatile, and for 57 years, untouchable. But Pete Rose didn't play like Cobb. He didn't glide. He scrapped. He sprinted to first on walks. He dove headfirst into bases. He earned the nickname Charlie Hustle, not from elegance, but from effort. And it's that effort that carved out 4,156 career hits. He didn't get there with 240 hit seasons or MVP years that stole headlines. He got there through relentless production, year after year, line drive after line drive. And like Aaron before him, Rose's secret wasn't a single moment, it was time. Over 24 seasons, he averaged 177 hits per year. That level of consistency is unheard of today, in an age where players peak for 6 or 7 seasons, where injuries, load management, and bullpen specialization chip away at longevity. It's hard to imagine anyone getting close. Case in point, as of now, the active MLB hits leader is Freddie Freeman, with just over 1,300 hits across 16 seasons. For him to match Rose, he'd need to average nearly 240 hits for 8 more seasons. That's not just improbable, it's physically impossible in today's game. But Rose's chase wasn't just about numbers. It was obsession. He knew what he was after. When he finally passed Cobb on September 11, 1985, lining a single into left center off San Diego's Eric Show, it wasn't just the culmination of a career, it was the coronation of a relentless will. Yes, his legacy is complicated by the betting scandal. Yes, he's still not in the Hall of Fame, but even his harshest critics really dispute the number. 256. That's the kind of record that feels less like a statistic and more like a monument to structure. Built out of broken bats, blood-stained uniforms, and worn-down cleats. A reminder that greatness doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes, it looks like a guy in a dirty jersey who just won't sit down. And while Pete Rose's relentless contact earned him the crown of most hits, another man, Lou Gehrig, held a quieter, more devastating record: most career grand slams. It wasn't flashy like Bonds or fiery like Ryan. It was steady, terrifying reliability for 75 years. Gehrig's mark of 23 grand slams stood untouched, a testament to a man who rose to the occasion with the bases loaded more often than any hitter in history. But here's what makes the record so special. Grand slams are rare. They require the perfect storm teammates on base, a good pitch to hit, and the nerve to deliver. And Gehrig delivered over and over. His swing was effortless, his stance quiet, his strength colossal. But his legacy isn't built on just the record, it's built on what the record meant. Every time he stepped to the plate with the bases juiced, the air changed, pitchers grew cautious, fans held their breath, and more often than not, he cleared the bases and trotted home like it was routine. He made the extraordinary feel inevitable. Then, in 2013, another Yankee did what no one else had in nearly a century. Alex Rodriguez hit his 24th grand slam, passing Gehrig's record. It came with a 380-foot shot off George Condos of the Giants, and later, in 2015, a Rod hit one final slam, setting the mark at 25 career grand slams, a record built on clutch. Now, a Rod's career, like Bonds, is draped in controversy, allegations, suspensions, and a complicated redemption arc followed him. But strip away the scandal, and what remains is a man who showed up in high leverage moments more than anyone else. 25 times, he stared down a pitcher with 3 ducks on the pond and went deep. And while he wasn't always loved, respected, or even trusted, he was feared. That's the connective tissue between Gehrig and Rodriguez. Different eras, different narratives, same cold-blooded results. In a game filled with failure, where even the best fail 70% of the time, grand slams are thunderclaps, rare, loud, permanent, and to do it more than anyone. That's not luck, that's legacy. We've talked about the long careers, the jaw-dropping numbers, the records born from durability or controversy. But now it's time to visit a different kind of milestone, one that's as brutal as it is majestic. The most regular season wins by a team. The number is iconic 116. That's the ceiling. That's the elusive summit only 2 teams in the history of Major League Baseball have reached. First, the 1906 Chicago Cubs. Then, nearly a century later, the 2001 Seattle Mariners. We've already explored the Mariners' meteoric run, but the 1906 Cubs, they were a monster forged in a much different world. Dead ball era, no lights, no night games, travel by train, and yet they won 116 games in a 154-game season. Their winning percentage, a jaw-dropping .763. Think about that. They lost only 36 games all year. That's barely 1 loss per week. Their pitching staff was impenetrable. Mordecai Three-Finger Brown posted a 1.0 for ERA. They had for pitchers with eras under the .00. Offense didn't matter as much because no one could score on them. But just like the 2001 Mariners, their season ended in heartbreak. They lost the World Series to the Chicago White Sox, a scrappy underdog team known as the Hitless Wonders. And just like that, the record-setting Cubs became a historical anomaly, a team that did everything right until the moment it mattered most. Fast forward to modern times, and no team has cracked 116 again. Not the 1998 Yankees dynasty, not the 2020 Dodgers juggernaut, not even the star-studded Astros teams of the late 2010s. Why? Because baseball doesn't let you dominate for that long anymore. The league is too deep, bullpens too specialized, schedules too demanding. You can have a great month, even a great summer, but to win 116 games, you have to be perfect from April to October. And even then, history has taught us that doesn't guarantee a ring. That's the bitter irony of the 116 club. Both teams who reached it, Cubs and Mariners, didn't win the World Series. It's almost poetic. The highest peak followed by the sharpest fall, but their legacy isn't tarnished. It's mythic. Because while titles are won in October, records like this are built in the heat of July, the grind of August, and the mental test of September, and 116 is more than just a number. It's a season when everything, for just a moment, aligned. And now, we come full circle to the heart of pitching, the most elemental duel in baseball. One man, one batter, one moment. And when it comes to that moment repeating itself over a lifetime, no one stood taller than Walter Johnson. He didn't just dominate hitters, he haunted them. In an era where gloves were primitive, fields were unpredictable, and training regimens barely existed, Walter Johnson still carved out a legacy that reads like fiction. Over a 21-year career, he racked up 417 wins, a .17 ERA, and most notably 3,508 strikeouts. That last number held as the gold standard of pitching power for over 5 decades. It stood untouched, a granite milestone from the dusty corners of early baseball. Until the 1980s, that's when something strange happened. 3 Hall of Fame pitchers, Nolan Ryan, Steve Carlton, and Gaylord Perry, all surpassed Johnson's mark in the same season. Ryan did it first. In April 1983, Carlton followed in May. Perry crossed the line in August. Suddenly, what had once been sacred was now being stormed. But even among those 3, one remained dominant far beyond the others. Nolan Ryan didn't just break Johnson's record, he left it in the dust. When he retired in 1993, Ryan had 5,714 strikeouts. That's not a record, it's a fortress. That number is so far ahead of everyone else that it almost breaks your brain. Second place, Randy Johnson with 4,875, a staggering number on its own, and still nearly 900 strikeouts behind Ryan. And when you consider that Ryan also threw 7 no-hitters, including one at age 44, his case becomes bulletproof. What made it more unbelievable is how he did it. His mechanics were violent. His fastball had bite. He was wild, yes, but that wildness was part of the terror. Facing Nolan wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous, and no one, in any era, threw harder for longer. Now let's talk realism. Could anyone ever break 5,714 in today's game? Not a chance. Pitchers are on innings limits. Workloads are monitored like vital signs. Most starters don't even pitch enough innings in a season to flirt with the strikeout totals Ryan posted in his 40s. And then there's the fact that he averaged 112 strikeouts per year over 27 seasons. That's not just longevity. That's warlord-level dominance. So when you hear that number 5,714, know that it's not just a record. It's a mountain made of x, and no one's even brought climbing gear. So what do we make of all this? Of numbers that once seemed carved in stone only to be shattered by greatness, obsession, or evolution? The truth is, in baseball, unbreakable is never as permanent as it sounds. The records we revere are snapshots, windows into extraordinary moments that bend the laws of the sport. Babe Ruth's 714 home runs felt immortal until Hank Aaron eclipsed them with quiet strength. Cal Ripken's 2,630-game streak redefined durability in a sport designed to break your body. Ichiro's 160 hits didn't just beat a record, they challenged the entire philosophy of modern hitting. And Nolan Ryan's 5,714 strikeouts? That's not even a record anymore, it's an impossibility. Every record we've explored lies at the intersection of talent, timing, and something even rarer, the will to show up every day, the will to run when others would hold, the will to pitch when your arm is cooked and the game's on the line. These aren't just stats, they're stories. They're reflections of era's dead ball, destroyed, sabermetric, and the players who shaped them. But maybe what's most fascinating isn't who broke the records, it's the ones who hold them now. Because in today's game, where strategy rules and efficiency trumps grit, many of these records will likely never be touched again. Not because players aren't great, but because the game has changed. We've optimized the soul out of some parts. We've preserved arms, shortened swings, and redefined risk, and in doing so, we've probably made sure that Rickey Henderson's 1,406 stolen bases, Ripken's iron streak, Bond's 73 homers and Rose's 4,156 hits will stand forever. These are not just high water marks, they're caps, ceilings that speak to what's possible when a player transcends their moment. So the next time you walk past an old scoreboard or see a dusty number etched on a Hall of Fame plaque, remember, those weren't just the best players. They were the ones who dared to do something no one else could and no one else has, and maybe never will, because in baseball, like life, what's truly unbreakable is the legend you leave behind. Asterisk, the most unbreakable records in baseball are more than numbers, their legacies forged by grit, greatness, and timing. While future stars may dazzle, many of these marks stand as monuments to a past era of sheer endurance, power, and impossibility.